Hi folks, welcome to this premium podcast, The Lotus Eaters, where we're going to be talking about ethical knowledge and a few other concepts that I think are necessary leading up to our book club about the novel Brave New World, because I want you to really get the full understanding of what Aldous Huxley was trying to put across with this novel, and I think that we can do it. So, in the last episode of this podcast, Thick Concepts, the again, sort of required watching leading up to this, we established that there's a distinction between scientific and mythological thinking. The scientific worldview is concerned with universal generalizations. The mythological worldview is concerned with irreplaceable particulars, and that scientific thinking is valueless, whereas mythological thinking is value-laden. Scientific thought is precise, and mythological thinking is thick, as in it's imprecise, and it deals with a depth of concepts in a singular word. So that's where we left off last time. How did you feel about all of that before we begin?
Pretty good. It's a subject I hadn't thought about. So, yeah.
Right, so we're going to begin with talking about the meaning of good. I don't know why I find that funny, but it's just such a simple word.
Because it's very orc, isn't it?
It's very orc, but it's a simple word, but it's really hard to define. And in the Western tradition, we have historically always viewed it as being an objective concept. So some objective idea of what good is, and this obviously comes through Christianity, but it goes back to Plato, who held that moral values are objective and moral judgments are partly prescriptive. They're informed to guide our actions. And Plato's theory of forms, in particular the form of the good, were external realities that were a part of the universe. They were transcendental, they were outside of our own minds. And this was sort of the original starting position, or at least he puts these words into Socrates' mouth. But it's entirely possible Socrates said something similar. Aristotle follows on from this with what he calls the good for man, which is the relevant bit that we'll be talking about. And Kant continues all of this to his perfectly good will. And this, of course, is parallel. These are secular views of what good is. And this is, of course, parallel to theological views on good, which are that they come from God. The one thing they all have in common, though, is that in the sort of central structure, the sort of fabric of the universe, there is something called good. And that's hard to really pin down if you think about it in a kind of modern scientific view, because it appears that it's not true. This was how the philosopher kings were meant to justify their power in the Republic. They had, after many years of study, all of this hard-earned knowledge of the forms, and this would justify their unlimited power. But epistemologically, we can't seem to identify any intrinsic, objective, moral values in the world, and so good doesn't seem to refer to them. There appears to be no inherent goodness in the universe, as we would understand it. Any thoughts on that? Any questions?
This seems pretty straightforward. I mean, if you prepare what you think good is in your culture, in your part of the world, well, go to the different part of the world where they think raping people because they're of the wrong faith is also good, or at least not bad, and then reassess the fact that good is not universal.
Yes, and there's no inherent goodness in the universe. And so, but the thing is, it makes you ask the question, okay, well, why is it for 2,500 years everyone thought there was? Like, why would they think that if it's so obviously not true?
Because they know the barbarians are not us.
Maybe. Aristotle begins his Nicomachean Ethics by saying that the good is that which at all things aim, and that ethics is a part of the science of politics, whose goal is not knowledge but practice. The aim towards, according to Aristotle, is something called eudaimonia, which is often translated as happiness, but that's actually not an accurate way of translating it. It really means human flourishing, and so it means sort of vitality, success, thriving. It doesn't necessarily mean happiness. And this can be known by rational determination as it's intrinsically desirable and not good simply because it's desirable. And this is similar to what modern philosophers such as Sidgwick would call good from the point of view of the universe. Now, the point of view of the universe is what we can call the absolute conception, right? And that's different to the human conception. The human conception is good from the point of view of a human. The absolute view is good from the point of view of the universe.
What does that even mean?
Well, that means if you are the universe, then you would have an opinion on what good or bad is.
Does that make any sense?
Well, that's what science thinks.
How am I meant to... Yeah, okay. I can't take the perspective of the universe anyway, because I'm not it.
Well, that is the argument against objectivity, incidentally. Yeah. So that's what, when you say objective, you mean not tied to any particular human perception, right? And so any rational being should be able to observe the same thing. We're getting a bit ahead of ourselves, but we will cover this in a minute, right? But anyway, so getting back to good, these views all hold in common that they have an objective view of what good means. So someone who uses the concept of objective moral value will assume that there are requirements that exist, quote, in the nature of things, which is just how Bernard Williams puts it. I think it was Bernard Williams, was that or John Mackey? Without being a requirement to any person or even God. So to be morally good will then satisfy those intrinsic requirements. The problem is, what are they? How do we understand what the universe says is good? Universal values, then, would have to be in some way prescriptive from the point of view of the universe. So the universe would have to be telling you that, in some way, that there is there is a good, and B, this is how you follow it. So the universe would have to have a plan for a human life. You look skeptical.
It's looking very much like a substitution for God.
Yes.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.